And now for something completely different. No, not another Monty Python reference. Unicorn Overlord, the newest game from Vanillaware developers. Now, you might be thinking, hey, this isn't Bloodborne. And you'd be correct. This is actually a game that has been on my radar for quite some time, but due to commitments to other games that I had already started, and my desire to never leave a game unfinished, mostly. Yeah, looking at you, Salt and Sanctuary, and Salt and Sacrifice actually. But I didn't play this demo. I heard the demo was extensive, which is a great thing. You always want to hear from a demo. But with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Grand Blue Fantasy Relink and many other games barreling down my neck at the time, I gave this one a miss. It stayed on my hard drive for a while, but never really got around to even trying it until I got to the point where I ran out of space and needed to delete it. But that brings us to today, when we're back, taking a break from the thralls of Yharnam, and I've come to check out this medieval world. And oh boy, am I checking it out. Now, a demo is meant to entice the player, to give the player an idea of what to expect from the final game, and to whet their appetite enough to make them moved to purchase the final game. Now, I have heard that this demo can be played for upwards of 9 hours. Now, anyone who plays a demo for 9 hours is already going to buy the full game. I think we can all understand this. I've done this many times, and you probably have too. I've put in dozens of hours into the Final Fantasy XVI demo, or the Tales of Arise demo, even the Octopath Traveler 2 demo. But what can a game demo tell you within the first 45 minutes? Well, all the footage you're going to look at here will be from just about my first 45 minutes of playing Unicorn Overlord. And if a game can't convince you in 45 minutes, well then, I'm not sure it's ever gonna. So, let's jump right into the world of Unicorn Overlord.
I beg you, my queen, take leave of this place while you're still able.
To where, I might ask? Nigh every last of Cornia's lords has forsaken us in favor of the traitor Valmor. No refuge remains for...
Now, right off the bat, this game is speaking to me. The art style, 2D, but detailed, right up my alley. The voice acting, serious but not overdone, right up my alley. Even the dialogue fits what, in my mind, would be spoken of characters in this situation in a similar time frame. I find that everything in the presentation that we get right here in the opening minutes is really well done and is enticing, without being able to escape the inescapable, overused term Game of Thrones like intrigue. We see that right here. Monarchy fleeing from a traitorous insurgence of an outsider taking over their kingdom. You know, the young prince who is destined to lead his people back to his homeland. You know, again, not the most groundbreaking of material, especially for anyone who's played something like the Diofield Chronicle recently, but I'm a sucker for this kind of stuff, so they had me intrigued. The voice acting, as I mentioned, quite good. Again, what you would expect of this, and while we can't always go for accuracy, we need to go for what the audience expects to hear or see. And they're doing quite well with that here.
My faith and more lies with you, Joseph. I only pray it is enough.
Now here we're introduced to the movement of this game. While being tactical in nature, it's not grid-based, which honestly I prefer. Although one of these days I do need to play Jeanne d'Arc and see how that works out now that they've added it to PS5. But again, to mention the DioField Chronicle, I prefer a non-grid based SRPG. But here, we're about to bounce up against what I felt would have been my biggest hurdle with this game, which is the combat and how the combat works. Because you see, in Unicorn Overlord, while you move to engage with your opponents in this way, and then you can choose to make some last-minute adjustments before engaging in a skirmish, what you would assume is turn-based combat actually is not. In fact, it's not even interactive. You'll notice that we're basically watching a cutscene right here, and there's no input from me in this exchange whatsoever. I am a passenger, the same way you are, just watching what's going on. And at first, I was quite put off by this. Being a fan of both action RPGs and turn-based, not having any kind of control input in a game that looks like this just feels completely counterintuitive to me. But does that mean that its quote-unquote combat is bad or lacking? I would venture to say no, because as we will see later on in this video, there is quite a bit of depth, but the depth, instead of being choosing character actions in the moment, the depth comes from strategy before the battle. Think gambits in previous Final Fantasy games. You gotta set them up before you knock them down.
Seize her!
Enlighten me, Valmor. To what end do you seek to usurp my throne?
Self-centered fool. It's not merely your throne I aspire towards. It's all of them. Zenoira are the rightful sovereigns of Fevrith, and I, the blade to restore our world to its natural order.
You seek to plunge the continent into war. Fevrith need not suffer your delusions.
A proper ruler demands unity, not pointless politicking with insufferable neighbors. Now, I shall achieve that unity through conquest, and reclaim that which is rightfully mine.
I would sooner see you slain by my hand!
Year 895 of the Hallowed Chronicle. Claiming himself a scion of the fallen Sonoran Empire, Cornia's once decorated General Valmor rebelled against his erstwhile home at the seat of its monarchy, Gran Corinne. Its queen...
Speaking of the DioField Chronicle again, the geopolitical aspect of this game is quite similar to that. Warring nations, or eventually not so much warring nations as the plot goes on, but the different nations, the different regions, traveling to those, and the relationships between those nations seems to play quite a part in this game, as it did in DioField, as it did even in Final Fantasy 16. And again, this is something I kinda like. So I'm looking forward to this fully fleshed out aspect of it. Granted, if early previews of this game are to be believed, because I try not to watch too much information on this game to spoil it, but the story doesn't quite live up to the grandiosity of perhaps Final Fantasy 16, but did anyone really expect it to? I think the main course here really is the strategy gameplay and combat, and by all counts it does quite well with that. But if you're not interested in political intrigue, hopefully you come for the strategy and stay for the story. although not every game is able to pull that off.
Few dared stand against the ironclad fist of Emperor Galerius. Embers of resistance burned on, yet the downtrodden could cling only to furtive hopes of liberation. Desperate prayers which fell upon deaf ears night after unceasing night. 10 years have passed since the Shroud of War first set over Cornea.
So we see here the combat being explained, and the game does a good job of, I hesitate to say spoon feeding you, but it's kind of spoon feeding you. Everything that takes place in terms of how the combat actually works, it takes its time. Perhaps that's why the demo's so long. It doesn't force too many crazy things on you, because it can become quite complicated pretty quickly if they were to do that. But as you can see, basically depending on what skills your party or your unit at the time has, that will determine their actions, and that will determine how well they actually stack up against an enemy unit, which the game does show you the overall outcome of that battle before you engage in that battle, which helps you to know what to do and what not to do. But as you can see here, basically what you have set up, or what your characters, I think even based on their placement, be it in the front or back row, will determine what skills they use, if they use the red skills or the blue skills, which are the passive skills. And this is where some of the strategy really comes in. Building a unit that is good against another unit specifically, or that has certain buffs. You can see how over time this is going to be expanded upon when you get more and more different types of units. Horseback units, griffin units, fighters, lance users, thieves, and they all have their specialities. Now, this is one thing that I really liked. At this point, playing through the game, still I'm getting to grips with the fact that you have to press the R2 button to actually make things happen. You can plan out movements, but nothing actually happens until you basically hit the go button, and then characters will move. But losing a battle isn't the end of the world in this game. You can fight, lose a battle, and you kind of get pushed back. And then you can just kind of re-engage as long as you still have life still left in you. Or you can switch to a different unit. In this case, I softened this guy up with Joseph, and then actually, unintentionally, dealt the killing blow with main character and friends in this unit. And that moves us on here. So, at this point, I'm becoming more intrigued. Again, I'm grappling with the fact that I'm not an active participant in the combat moment to moment, but I'm still compelled to play, which is, I guess, the signs and hallmarks of a good demo. Now we're a little bit later on in the game, after what we've just seen, and we're out here in an open area. And you're seeing enemy placements in different areas of the map, and you're just basically free to choose what direction you want to go in. However, one thing you need to keep in mind is that there is a time limit, which you will see pop up on screen, kind of towards the middle of the screen at the top border. And this time passed section here, time limit, as you can see right there, that basically tells you the time limit that you should be finishing this stage in. So if you don't quite make it, then you realize, okay, there was a better way for me to have gone about this. Interestingly, once you clear off this map area here from enemies, you are free to explore it. So the overworld is actually also the main world, where you'll be traversing and doing other things, like eventually mining, going to different cities, exploring, all this kind of stuff. So this is a little unique to me in my experience, of course. I think other games have done this, especially the Ogre Battle games. But at this point, the annoyance at not being active in battle is wearing off. And I'm now thinking more about, okay, what characters do I have? And what strats can I use? And it's becoming quite exciting. Anytime a demo can get you excited about what you're going to do next, it's doing its job. So those are my impressions of the Unicorn Overlord demo. I'm really liking this. I'm gonna keep playing it even though there's no trophies, which is a rarity for me. I encourage you, give it a shot. And let me know. Are there any other demos that you'd like to hear my opinion on? Stellar Blade, perhaps? If I can get my wife out of the room long enough? Sure, we'll give it a try. And keep an eye out for more Bloodborne content. And with that, thanks for joining me. This has been the Individual 11. I'll catch you guys later.
A trivial undertaking.